MIWSDC, and congratulations to both teams for making it this far. I'm looking forward to a very exciting round, and I wish both teams the very best of luck. I'll invite the panelists to introduce themselves in the order in which they appear on the draw.
Hi everyone, Adil here. Personally fine with him, they them. But yeah, do address us as a whole and best of luck to both sides.
Great.
Hi everyone, my name is Chaidu. Good luck with the round.
Lovely.
Hello, my name is Jerson. Congratulations on making it to the Open Grand Finals. Best of luck on this amazing round.
Hi, I'm Jess. Congratulations and best of luck.
Hi, I'm Kashfia. Best of luck to the both teams.
Hi, I'm Providence, and best wishes to both teams.
All right, lovely. Just a couple of things in terms of housekeeping. First of all, I'm unsure if one of the panelists would like to keep time, but on the assumption that everyone will be too busy flowing your lovely arguments, I will highly encourage everyone to time your own and each other's speeches. I will, however, be running an external timer at 8 minutes and 15 seconds. I'll raise my hands from my keyboard like this to show that I'm not flowing. Anything you say beyond that point is not making it onto the formal record of the round. Secondly, at the top of your speech, please remind me of your name, the speech that you're about to deliver, and your preferred pronouns if you'd like to declare any, and your POI preference. If you do not declare a POI preference, the presumption will be that you prefer your POIs to be asked in the chat. Finally, please ask and answer POIs. POIs are good for engagement, but they make debate a little bit more fun. Please make sure that you're timing your opponent's speeches so that you do not ask POIs during protected time, and to ensure that you do not ask POIs that exceed 15-second mark. If you do, I will call you to order, which is to indicate to you that your POI has been going on for far too long and it's time for you to wrap it up. With that said, and on the presumption that there are no questions, I have the immeasurable privilege of welcoming the Prime Minister on the motion that this House would end the relationship before you leave. Hear, hear.
Okay, great. Just checking that I'm audible. Great. My name is Laura, pronoun she, her, and POI is in the chat, please. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. The trope of high school sweethearts breaking up when one of them moves to college and the other one remains in their final year of school isn't just a fun movie to watch. Instead, it is the reality of millions and millions of people who have decided that the best course of action for them when they're starting a new life is to do that holistically and completely. On proposition, we stand strong. If you're going away for a very long time, you should break up with your current relationship. A couple of things before I get into my arguments. Number one, our policy. Quite simply, if we think you're going overseas for a long time with very few or no opportunities to see your partner, such as you're studying overseas, you have a cool work opportunity, then you should break up with them before you leave. We're fine to do this in a kind and mature way with proper communication to make it as clean and as painless as possible, although it will still be painful. We can mitigate that as much as possible. Secondly, then, our trade-off. We're fine to trade off the potential happiness and fulfillment that you could have gained from extending that relationship even after you had left for overseas. This is okay with us for 4 reasons. Number one, we think it is true most of the time that you're able to find the same fulfillment in other people. This is why many people have multiple relationships that last a long time, because it isn't just one person that can make you happy. Many people can find many different people that can make them happy. Secondly, then, we think often this fulfillment that you get isn't worth the stress and anxiety that will prove to you comes with long distance, so it isn't worth it anymore to continue that relationship anyways. Number 3, we think given that this is your first love, you're probably quite young and quite inexperienced. There's a very high possibility that you were wrong, that this isn't your soulmate, and then we think it is not like the best decision for you to stay with them, even if that were to be true. But fourthly, if indeed opposition wants to argue that your first relationship was all that and was so deeply important to you that you should have continued it, then we think a couple of things can happen. You can see the other person, you can like in a few years, or you can miss them so much that you reach out and like get back together. In that case, your love is likely to come back even stronger because you know that that is the one for you, and your love for each other was able to survive such a tumultuous period. Ultimately, yeah, we think opposition cannot tell us that like you need to hang on to this relationship for whatever it can bring you. That's out of the debate after this trade-off. Lastly, then, what are we going to prove to you? please. Number one, that we're better for you as the individual. Number two, that we're fair to the other person. And number three, that we create better relationships in the future. First argument then, why are we better for you? I think this argument is intuitively important because as an individual, you ought to prioritize yourself and your own happiness, given that you are the only one who has to experience that and actually live your life. There are 4 ways why we're better for these individuals in the instance where they do break up with their first true love. Number one, we think you don't have to go through the emotional pain of maintaining that relationship over long distance. And that plays out in a couple of ways. So no, it looks like the stress, please put your PYs in the chat, that's what I said. It looks like the stress that the other person is cheating. Even if you are in a committed relationship, it's just human nature to mistrust other people. It's human nature to be worried. Number 2, the stress of misunderstandings, because often communication through online mechanisms is limited and it's difficult to understand if someone was joking about something or not. That kind of thing causes conflict. But thirdly, we think you're likely to feel guilty for leaving someone for so long and essentially putting your lives together on pause. On the comparative, where we break that up, we think there will be like in short-term pain when you have to go through a breakup and you're really sad, all that. But in the long term, when you do eventually heal, as the vast majority of people do, it is better to not have that extra added stress when you're in a new environment and there is enough things going on in your life. Second reason why we're better for people is that we give them the chance to explore other relationships. Important context here about what happens when you go overseas. Number 1, you're exposed to an entirely different set of people. But number 2, when you are put in different scenarios and different contexts, as an individual, you grow, but also you learn more about yourself. So even if you were very happy in your relationship and you thought you were the perfect fit before you left, you're probably likely to want to explore other relationships and open up different perspectives after you leave and you meet these other people and you know yourself better. On our side, we allow you to do that and to take the chance and maybe find someone better. On their side, they're shackled. Third layer as to why we're better for people is we think you no longer have to live under the pressure of maintaining your commitment issues, especially at such a young age and in such a lonely situation overseas, far away from everyone you know. Important context here about commitment issues. We think sometimes they are people's fault, but often they're not just character flaws. They're the result of hookup culture. They're the result of growing up in unstable environments. They're the result of having trauma that gave you trust issues, those kinds of things. On their side, they force the person to stay in the relationship and to live under the pressure of not battling towards that. On our side, we allow you to remove yourself from that situation. We don't put that pressure on you, specifically when you have enough going on in your life already. But the fourth reason why we're far better for people is that we think if you still want to be in a relationship and you still want to have that kind of connection with someone, then on our side, we force you to be more confident and more proactive with approaching people. This is incredibly important because when you're in a new country with new people who you probably know very few of, it's a very necessary skill to be able to put yourself out there. On their side, what happens is that people stay in their comfort zones. And I know they're going to come up here and tell me, oh, that you still make friends and you still push yourself in that manner. We think it isn't the same level of vulnerability and it isn't the same level of pushing yourself to be proactive and to be confident as it is to walk up to someone and say that you're interested in them as opposed to just wanting to be friends. Overall, we're able to show you here how we're far better for people in both emotionally and like with the ability to have freedom within these new situations specifically. Before the second argument, go.
The logic of your case is that you should only date someone who meets the criteria of always being by your side and completely minimal online contact. How realistic is this?
Okay, look, there is a very clear difference between being in a relationship with someone who you live very close to and can see on an often basis, whereas someone who you are very, very far away from and in the info side states that you can't see them at all. We think it exists on a spectrum and it's a difficult place to draw a line on, but if we do have to draw a line for the purposes of the debate, it's based on how often you're able to see people and how easy it is to contact them, given that your lives have changed so much now and you're so far away from them. That's completely unlikely when you're going overseas. So that is the line that we're drawing. Cool. Second argument then, why we're fairer to the other person. I think obviously this is also intuitively important. You care about someone, you want to make sure you're doing them right? There are 2 ways why you're completely unfair to the other person when you continue the relationship on the side of opposition. Number 1, you put your life with them on hold. What this means, you put your life with them on hold. What this means is that we think you're leading them on, either if you're going overseas and you change your mind and then you decide to not come back, or if you just go overseas and put your life on pause for a great amount of time. We think it is your responsibility, if you know the reality of your decision, to end to end the relationship so that they can continue with their life and not stay like with you the whole time. But secondly, we think given your history of commitment issues, you're likely to cheat. This is for two reasons. Number one, people act based on their past behavior. This is because we form mental patterns that we continue to do again and again. This is why we ask for reference letters and we check criminal records because before we hire people, because we know people repeat their past actions. But secondly, you're likely to cheat because long distance is just way less fulfilling than it is in in-person relationships. One, you're likely to deprioritize this relationship because it's so flexible. If your relationship is based on like a call every night, you can just keep pushing that call out if you're busy instead of like having a time block where you meet up with someone. Number two, because you lack the physical aspect of it, which is really important to a lot of people. And number three, because communication is halted there. Ultimately here, we think you're likely to be unfaithful to the other person in a wide variety of manners. That's not fair to them. And if you care about them, you're going to set them free. And if you care about them, you're going to break up before you leave. And if you care about them, you're going to vote for literal legends.
The House thanks the first proposition speaker for those remarks and now invites the first opposition speaker to open the opposition case. Here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll take verbal POIs. The entirety of the proposition case rests upon the assumption that every single long-distance relationship is likely to end up in the worst-case scenario. I think it was insufficient for first proposition to immediately trade off the trajectory of a better relationship because this immediately pushed them to the lower cap in this debate, in which they are able to only achieve some forms of relationships at the end of the day. But this opposition case will then prove to you why every single following relationship on their side of the house was never going to be as fulfilling as your first love that you have spent so much time with. There's two keynotes of setup to the opposition case then, in which what proposition crucially misses out in this debate. Firstly, I think there's importance in pointing out the fundamental difference between this relationship and your past relationships and what the motion therefore calls for. I think, and as the interpretation of the info slide then, that the commitment issues therefore come from, for example, your talking stages, your situationships with other individuals, and that is where you have founded the commitment problems, or rather that in that relationship yourself, that you have this long history of commitment problems, but now at the end of your juncture of wanting to go overseas, this is when you are in a committed and fulfilling relationship. That if you have crossed all of these hurdles to finally get that one relationship that fulfilled you as an individual and has led to your character development, this is what proposition has to trade off in their realm, that it's so committed and it's such a fulfilling relationship. For example, with your first love that you likely grew up in high school and spent all of your high school days in the canteen sitting together eating lunch, for example. Therefore, it's clear but I want to make this clear clarification that this is not a retrospective debate. Therefore, proposition cannot argue in a vacuum about why long-distance relationships are necessarily bad. They necessarily had to analyze how this relationship has been fulfilling in the status quo. They could not immediately trade this off. Secondly, in terms of the burden set, on opposition, the burden is simple, that you're able to get more stable relationships, or at worst, you provide the perspective and trajectory for a good relationship at the end of the day. But secondly, proposition has to defend the immediate harm of regret and setting up an invisible barrier for your relationship. And it was unrealistic for proposition to say that you will ever get back with the individual then. Few additional points of refutation before the rest of the case, which directly clashes with their argumentation. Firstly, let's tackle about the points of you as an individual, and I'll separate this into three different subpoints then. Firstly, I want to point out that the basis of the entire case is that LDRs never work, but we need to drag proposition out of the 18th century or whatever. We're currently in the 21st century. I think a lot of people conduct LDRs. Your LDR wasn't just one that you randomly texted someone, like living in Singapore now, for example, and wanted to start a new relationship. It was someone that you likely spent your entire first love. You had to go through so many years to go over all of those commitment problems, and therefore you had this strong relationship. But secondly, I don't get what the proposition therefore wants in a relationship to fill the gap in your emotions then. They needed to prove why holistically you were able to get better relationships on their side of the house because of all the commitment problems that are likely going to become a cycle on their side of the house. Lastly, then towards this clash, are you likely to form new relationships? The clear case here is that they aren't going to form better relationships. Our side does this. We prove that in argumentation. Secondly, quickly dealing on the cheating point then. I want to know that you are the actor in this debate. insofar as they even read the info slide and how they incorrectly quoted the info slide in first proposition, we think that as an actor, even if like this was unlikely to begin with, but even if so, we think the harm as you as an actor could never actually be fulfilled, but it's rather on the comparative in this debate going to be worse on their side of the house. There's two substantive arguments in this speech. The first as to why this relationship is able to succeed. The thesis of this argument is that you in the motion have managed to overcome your own commitment problems. For example, you might have commitment issues due to all of the things that first proposition agrees with. And we agree with this characterization that probably that you had past trauma, that there are gaps in the love that you felt from your family, for example, that you could never actually settle down, that you could talk to multiple people on Instagram, for example, and kept talking to different people that you just found merely attractive. But what this person in their first love managed to make you do was actually change your perspective in life, that you always wanted to go back to them at the end of the day. 3 key layers of analysis then. Firstly, that you're likely to take preemptive measures that are likely to be undertaken on our side of the house. Verbal POIs, thank you. But at the end of the day, what are these preemptive measures? For example, you can read about LDRs. I don't think the person on our side of the house is suddenly just going to move overseas and be like, I don't care about my first love. I don't care about the person that has led me to have great days and spend multiple nights playing games with me until 3 a.m. and probably also made me experience great things in my life and my youth. I'm suddenly going to forget about this. I'm going to likely read about LDRs. We're going to have emotional reactions to this and likely want to succeed for the best. At the end of the day, on twofold, we get the personal end of improvement, but also you get communication with the other person. But you improve in terms of communication, like texting them, by constantly calling them at the end of the day. You're going to try your best, but also preemption, that this other person is likely going to be understanding about your situation insofar as you're moving to another country. You're in such a fulfilling relationship. I don't see why this person will just throw you out the window just because you're moving away. Second layer to this argument then is why the mechanisms to change and success. No, thank you. We believe that this relationship was extremely important to this individual then, and therefore you are likely to, since you are in a healthy and fulfilling relationship, is when you're going to strive to do your best at the end of the day. Even with your busy schedule, you're going to try to take time out of your day to actually talk to this individual, or you're likely going to actually get some form of consulting and likely going to look online how to deal with your LDRs. The third layer then is at the impact. No, thank you. At proposition's best, you are left alone overseas, losing your first love, and all of the emotional gaps are going to be present on their side of the house. Let's take a simple parallel. If you ask your parents about their first love, for example, they're likely going to talk endless about it because it was the unforgettable experience they have experienced for the entirety of their youth. This means that it is extremely important for you and likely the mechanism for you to likely try to make this succeed on our side of the house. Before I move on, sure.
If it is true that your first love rarely is all that you would like to claim, why is it that so few people actually end up with their first loves in the long term?
Yeah, so I think the people who do not end up with their first loves are people who spend time currently in person with them, and probably because you maximize the time with them, you end up in conflicts. But I think it's just non-contentious. The people on your side of the house probably still fall out of their first loves insofar as you're moving away from them. I think at the end of the day, it's more intuitive. You have a better relationship with someone, you're likely going to succeed better. They cannot just rely on these small externalities to support the entirety of their case. Second substantive argument then, on why you decrease feelings of regret. The premise of this argument is that this argument is non-conditional and deals with our worst-case scenario. Irregardless if the relationship succeeds on our side of the house, this was the feeling that you as an individual in the motion is going to feel. This argument is therefore threefold. Firstly, why was this relationship so important to you as an individual? Established throughout the entirety of our case, and I'd like to point out again how proposition just traces it off that it was your first love that you spent so much time with and gone through so many hurdles with. Therefore, you are likely to prioritize this relationship, and therefore, it fills up such an emotional capacity in you. This means you're likely to feel regret if you do break up with them because of this situation. Secondly then, why are you likely going to feel the immense amounts of regret on two mechanistic analysis? Firstly, that if all the burden of the relationship falling apart going to be put on you, the comparative on us, the comparative is going to be blamed on externalities if you actually do fall out, rather than you as an individual dealing with all of that burden. Then maybe the relationship could have succeeded, but I just decided to end it off before I could even test it out when I go overseas. It wasn't on the externalities, but you as an individual. But secondly, that in the future, that you can run through scenarios in your mind again and therefore repeat this cycle. The impact is clear. This is going to be worse on their side of the house because you are likely to find a placeholder in relationships, and it's going to harm further people. So this is the extended secondary impact, that you are therefore becoming a irrational actor, finding a placeholder for your first love. At the end of the day, it was clear proposition fights a losing case when you cap out this individual's happiness.
I thank the first opposition speaker for those remarks. I now invite the second opposition speaker.
Cool. My name's Daniel. Can POIs please be in the chat? And I'll count myself in when I'm ready. Cool. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Opposition was right about one thing, that you love this person so much. In fact, on our side, you love this person so much that you're willing to break up with them because you don't want to hurt them in the long run. Panel, we think that if you have a history of not being able to commit with someone, we think that it is an unfair burden to make your new partner a guinea pig to try and fix your commitment issues. We are dedicated to prove that we'll fix this relationship. Before I get into the two clashes, I would like to do a piece of extraneous rebuttal. Firstly, they tell us that it is in the POI that it is an unfair burden to only date someone who is always going to be on your side. Firstly, we think that it is not this, because we think if someone with commitment issues and someone with a psychological struggle, you should only be with people who is truly going to be with you by your side, because this is something that you are genuinely going to find fulfilling. Note how they concede that and agree with the characterization that this is a young person. Thus, we think that their young lives and their young love that they're experiencing should only be something that they truly find fulfilling and that the partner is always going to support them. We don't want to buy into mainstream narratives that you need to find love in order to have a fulfilling life. You need to find love that is unconditional and love that will always love you in order for it to be good. Don't fall into their mainstream idea of this. But secondly, even more, especially since you are young, you have time to experiment. We think that it's a good thing that you experiment with your love. Even if this is your first person that you're going to love, it doesn't mean that they're your only, and nor is it going to be your last. Cool. Let's get into the first clash that they try and make extremely contentious about will this relationship actually last? Firstly, they try and outframe us by telling us that this relationship is different. Yes, we agree that this relationship is different, but note how the history has happened with this person not being able to be in relationships. It doesn't just mean situationships, but it could just be other long-term relationships that this person just didn't feel true love for it. This person knows that they have had a capacity to hurt other people immensely because of their own psychological struggle that through no fault of their own they have. Thus, this person, by breaking up with this person and having an open conversation, offering your partner chocolates, offering them flowers and telling you, I really don't want to hurt you, but this is what I am going through mentally and I cannot control this. And I want to make sure that if anything happens, I want to make sure that you are not as hurt as other people because I love you that much. Secondly, they tell us that your long distance relationship can last. Note how just because most long distance relationships can work within a modern world, note the unique context given to us in the info slide that this person has commitment issues. There are 3 things that make this person much more committed with real life relationships and not long distance. Firstly, just by proximity, this person can't go out and meet other people as much in an intimate level because there's going to be much more familiar people who know what they are. Secondly, just in terms of accountability, you see your partner every day. We think it's a lot hard that you're able to see physical changes on them if, they've been with someone. But thirdly, just in terms of accountability, we think it's a lot easier to lie to someone over a text message, especially if you're someone who has the psychological condition of not being able to commit to people properly. Cool. Thirdly, They tell us that it's been fulfilling to you. You sit with this person at this canteen and you've done all of it. Note how everything that they've described has been very impersonal and very intimate relationships. We think that what happens now is you're actually going to be breaking this and you're not going to be seeing this person as closely. This means, secondly, that because you're going into an unknown venture and you need to end your romantic relationship in order to protect this person because you're not sure what the outcome would be. We think that it is worth taking the risk of breaking up with this person even if there's a possibility that you might never love them again, because the risk of hurting this person if you cheat on them, if you break with them over a text message, can cause onto them. If you love them, you'll break up with them. Fourthly, though, they tell us you can learn about a long-distance relationship and you can just do a bunch of Googling. Note how we just think that this isn't that true because it's a psychological condition. The same way you can't fix depression with a WikiMed search, you can't fix severe commitment issues. But moreover, we think that this is unfair for 3 reasons. Firstly, it's an unfair burden to put on your partner. They are not your guinea pig to experiment and try and fix your commitment issues with, because you're trying to force yourself to get rid of them. You're going to ignore the possibility that they could be extremely hurt. But secondly, we think that commitment is really just a Eurocentric idea. It looks like an African and many Asian cultures of polygamy existing on a very large scale. We think that forcing this person to comply to Western standards is something that is unfair. We think if they want to break up to experience other forms, because their commitment issues could just be a normal part of how humans function, but the Western world has forced onto different people. So we think it is fine for them to break up and experience other forms of love in life, not just the Western world that Malaysia throttles down our throats. But thirdly, we think that it happens through understanding, trying to fix your issues. It's by both of you having a mutual understanding that I love you and that I have a trust in you, and together we can try to fix these commitment issues, not trying to force each other to be in a relationship and fingers crossed it works out by me messaging you every night. Note how we actually gave you mechanisms of how we fix it, not just a hope. But fourthly, they concede to us in a POI that you can love people even better when you're further away from them. Sure, we'll take this analysis. So if you break up with them and you spend less time with them there, you could eventually come back and love this person even more because you can regret it and you can see your regrets and you can come back to this person. If this person really loves you enough and they really are the right one for you to spend the rest of your life, they will take you back because they are that right love for your life. Don't force yourself into lousy relationships like they want you to believe. Cool. Before I get into the second clash, we'll integrate my matter about who gets better relationships. Quickly, why am I wrong?
If you have commitment issues, then why aren't you likely to become irrational and have multiple flings and situationships in absence of the one person that grounded you?
Yeah, you most probably could do that, and we don't think that those bunch of situationships could be that harmful to you. You as a different person can experience love, not just in, as I said, a Eurocentric way of being committed to someone for your entire life. But moreover, this person, if they ground you so much, I'm going to explain and answer that POI even better within my substantive argument. Firstly, just to respond to their thing of this emotional burden of feeling that it is your fault and running through different scenarios and becoming irrational, we think that this isn't going to happen when you can actually have an emotional connection to this person and a severe and a deep discussion with this person, rather than feeling immense anxiety when, in the future that your commitment issues are going to strike and you're not going to be this perfect person you've tried to be because your psyche simply doesn't allow for it. They needed to engage with Laura's first argument about why it protects yourself. But cool. 3 levels why we're better for relationships. Firstly, it's your first, to give some context, it's your first ever love. You don't want to lose it. Thus, when you actually break up with this person, you have a higher likelihood to have an open discussion, give gifts. And if this person really does love you, they'll most probably understand the battle that you're going through and understand that this is something that you're doing in their best interest, that you really want to help them. The comparative is when you break up over a phone call or because, you cheated or because you weren't committed enough to this relationship, this hurts both of you a lot better. But secondly, there are 3 outcomes, and we think all of the outcomes are the good or something that's good. Firstly, your best outcome where both of you still love each other and you just did a breakup as a preventative means to not hurt each other, and you get back when you finally see each other, and thus you can accept your flaws and you can know that I had commitment issues. I tried. I didn't want to hurt you while I was away because there was a high possibility, but when I'm back, I still love you. Secondly, it looks like it becoming a platonic relationship because you don't necessarily just want to love this person. True love is not just about intimacy and physical touch, but it could be about your experience and your personality. Thus, you can love this person regardless because you're not worried about breaking up and cheating with them, and you can thus rather be a friendship overseas, which you think has a lot less pressure on what you can and can't do. But thirdly, if you break up, we think that's a good thing. If this person's willing to break up because you have a psychological struggle, this is not the person that really loves you this as much as you love them. Thirdly, we strengthen these types of relationships because if you can have this this discussion with your partner, we think that this means that you trust each other. Trust means relations. If you side with relationships, break up with them.
House thanks the second opposition speaker for those remarks. We now invite the second opposition speaker to continue the opposition case. Here.
This is a proposition team that would have you believe that all people eventually cheat with the passage of time. This is a team that believes your teenage commitment issues should forever be engraved on your soul, that you can never work on those things. This is a team that genuinely has so little faith in the actor that at the first sign of difficulty, they would give up. The first thing I want to deal with is their ludicrous burden push on cheating, which they themselves realized wasn't strategic and dropped it completely from second. 1. We are the actor in the motion. It's a this house would motion. So we would choose to not cheat. Fiat. Second, cheating is deeply immoral. Most people are geared to wanting to do the right thing because they understand the consequences of their actions on others is a terrible thing. And for the reasons they themselves give for why you care about your partner are the precise reasons why you wouldn't want to cheat. Third, cheating is heavily stigmatized across all cultures because it's seen as such an evil act of betrayal that is the antithesis of the universal virtue of loyalty. So most likely, you probably wouldn't cheat. Second thing I want to clarify, our burden is not to prove that this is your one soulmate that we will 100% work out on our side. The difference here is this. Maybe they're right and this relationship doesn't end up working out. But on our side, you don't shoulder the burden of being the one who pulled the trigger, being the one who ended it, being the one who had so little faith in your partner that you chose to give up just because you were moving away. On our side, maybe it didn't work out in the worst case, but at least we trusted each other enough to try. We trusted each other enough to not abandon each other, that we would stay in touch even when we were oceans apart. That is something that they have to acknowledge in this debate, because the difference is that if the relationship fails on either side, they have to explain why they would want the additional burden of being the one who ended it and living forever with the regret of asking, what if? And that is the thing which ends up carry throughout your life. That even if it was the objectively correct decision, you always look for what the grass on the other side could have been, whether it could have been greener, whether it could have worked out if I could take a time machine, travel to the past and fix my mistakes. That is the world we want to prevent and why we oppose. 3 issues. First, can this relationship succeed? Second, on regret. Third, will this hurt your partner? First issue, can this relationship succeed? I agree the info slide says you have commitment issues. What this team has to demonstrate is why these commitment issues are so ingrained in you that they cannot be changed. Here is why you are likely aware of your commitment issues and other character flaws that you can work on. First, you are the actor in the motion. You know this. Assuming you are at a crossroads of picking between the two choices in the motion, assuming that you are considering the option of breaking up, probably means that you already are aware of some flaws that you may have. Take a seat. Second, friends and family give you feedback because they are the most honest about your character flaws and want to see you improve yourself. Third, there's a boatload of relationship content online that says, here are some red flags that demonstrate commitment issues. And if you realize that some of those characteristics apply to you, they apply to your life, you can look at those things and say, maybe I should change. The impact of this self-awareness is that you can introspect and find solutions. If anything, this is the best possible time for you to self-reflect and change. Because when the threat of losing your first love is hanging above your head, that is the biggest impetus for you to turn over a new leaf. The biggest impetus to finally seek therapy, to have more honest conversations. That's why.
I've paused the time. Just confirming, Umar is breaking up for everyone, right?
Yeah, it's breaking up.
To turn towards good outlays
All right,
their
great.
side. Speed in.
Umar, can you hear me? All right. Can someone on the opposition please text Umar and ask him to drop off and then rejoin the call?
Yes, we'll contact him immediately.
Got it.
Hello?
Hi, Umar. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is this better?
Yes. Can you read out the motion just so we can confirm your network will be able to sustain the rest of your speech?
This house would end the relationship.
Okay, great. Would you like us to turn off our cameras just in case, or do you think it'll be fine?
Yeah, I guess you can turn off the cameras until I finish. Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's fine.
Sorry,
I stopped
everyone.
your time at 3 minutes 36. The last thing that I quote was you saying that this becomes the impetus for you to do things like self-reflect, seek therapy, have honest conversations about this problem, and so on.
All right. Okay. 3, 2, 1. If anything, this is the best possible time for you to self-reflect and change, because when the threat of losing your first love is hanging above your head, that is the biggest impetus for you to turn over a new leaf and change, to turn over a new leaf, to seek therapy, to have more honest conversations, which is why you're likely to learn and evolve from this. But fine, let's be charitable and take them at their best. Maybe these commitment issues are not so easily solved, but on their side, you feed into them. You feed into those demons above your shoulder that you tell yourself that it was your fault for not taking more effort to try when you reflect back in 3 years' time, that you will forever be an uncommitted person because the one time you were faced with a difficult decision, you chose to not commit to it. And that is why in the future, all future relationships on their side will be worse off. So maybe they claim that this one person is not good for you, that when you move to the other country, you can find a new partner instead. We explain that the relationship with a new partner will be worse because you never confronted your flaws. You fed into your flaws and told yourself, you confirmed to yourself that you were an uncommitted person. That's why it's worse on their side. Second layer, will this relationship be fulfilling? And their explanation is probably not, because you don't get to see this partner all the time. Online communication isn't great. The first is that you know in advance that you're going to make this change. So it's not suddenly within like 2 days, like it's COVID and then you can't talk to your partner anymore, kind of intimate moments with your partner. You can adjust these things over time. You can set your expectations clear. And if their claim is correct that this person really loves you, they will be willing to at least try this out and adapt to the requirements of your new relationship. But second, question whether physical intimacy is that crucial to a relationship anyway, that most people are able to go long periods without physical intimacy, that when you go long periods without it, absence makes the heart grow fonder, that you will be willing to cherish these moments more when they're few and far between, which is why we don't think it's as unfulfilling as they say. We would rather have a relationship than nothing. Second issue on regret. This motion is not retrospective. It is whether as the actor on the 28th of April 2024 would choose to end the relationship or not. You have already invested unquantifiable amounts of time and emotion into this relationship. The question is, do we break it off now? So their only response to this case is, you will not regret it because you will have honest conversations and communication with them. So apparently, this guy is so immature that he can never be committed. But apparently, his conversations are going to be so honest and thorough, they can definitely assure this partner. We don't think that's a likely characterization. The more reasonable characterization is this person will probably want to make sure that they communicate this, but whether the other person takes it well is something out of the debate entirely. What we explained was that passage of time does not heal all the problems that you have with your regret, because the nuance of the motion is that you are migrating and meeting lots of new people, as First Prop concedes. Every time you go on LSE campus and meet someone who is in a happy LDR, or every time you meet a co-worker who lives apart from their partner successfully, the memories of your nightmare rush back to you. Note the nuance of this argument. It doesn't matter in reality whether more of your friends did long distance or short distance. Your brain self-selects the instances in which your friends' long distance relationships were successful. You fixate on this, you obsess over this, and all you do is blame yourself. Before this, I'll take a point.
When do you think it is justified to break up with someone?
We think it's justified to break up to someone when you think there's no way of making it work out at all. What we explain is clear reasons why it can work out, or at least even if it can't work out, at least you try to make it work out and you don't break off that trust that you had for so long. Note our argument on regret is not conditional on whether it was actually the objectively correct choice. It doesn't matter whether it actually increased or decreased your quality of life. Your mind fixates on what could have been. Your mind fixates on the grass being greener on the other side. The very fact that the end of this relationship was by by your doing, they activate all of the harms of regret. So when you break up, the only comfort you can tell yourself on their side is it's fine because LDR wouldn't have worked out anyways, that I'll eventually meet a better partner. But they never answer what happens when you don't. You create this dreamy ideal of a perfect relationship that you can one day opt into, but you never get the fruits of your imagination, which is why it's far worse on their side. Finally, will this hurt your partner? We explain that it can actually hurt them way more on their side of the house because you never put the trust in them to ask them if they were willing to work this out with you. You unilaterally decided that they were not good enough, that you were not good enough, and that all of the past few months of working together amounted to nothing. On their side, you never placed the faith in your partner or yourself. You constantly feed into your insecurities and you never make a successful relationship. Oppose.
The House thanks the second opposition speaker for those remarks and invites the third proposition speaker to close the substantive portion of the proposition case. Here.
Hi, I think I may be lagging a bit, but am I audible and visible?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay. Just checking everyone in the room's fine with me having my camera on. I just don't want anyone to miss out. Okay. I'm taking that as a yes. Hi, my name's Chewy. I prefer verbal POIs and pronoun she, her. Cool. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let's give opposition their moment of glory and take away the fact that you have a history of commitment issues. So for this speech, I'm going to tell you every single reason why you are allowed to break up with someone regardless of your past. I think this becomes really apparent in the third speech, when the reason why you should break up with someone, and the only reason why you should break up with someone, as if there's absolutely no way that you can make your relationship work. I disagree with this. I think there are 2 questions that we need to answer in this speech. Firstly, why do people join together in a relationship? And secondly, how do we impact your future relationship as you? But before that, let's reframe the strategy of this speech. And I think most of the speech will be literally strategy, given that it got severely severed in the round. 1, let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs panel. I think there are many needs that people need in a relationship. So for example, the sense of security, a sense of intimacy, a sense of warmth. But understand that the only reason that you're in a relationship and the only reason why you can see somebody so often is that your situation, the ability to be close with someone, form the basis of your relationship. Proximity equals intimacy. Although this may not be the case for every single relationship, this is the basis of this one. But secondly, understand, panel, that the reason why you would potentially want to break up with someone, given that the motion implies that the only reason a motion such as this one would be passed is if you had the intention to break up with someone, this is an act of defense. You're defending yourself against future hurt, and you're defending your partner against future hurt. We think that given that you are doing this out of an act of self-defense, self-preservation, this doesn't mean you're in some sort of moral slumber and that you're going to regret it so deeply later. It means that you're doing what is best for you right now. We support it. Thirdly, we think what the worst possible thing that could happen with someone who is literally waiting for you to send them a text every day is for you to send them a text 6 months down the line telling them that I'm so sorry, I'm going through a lot and I cannot be with you anymore. It's probably one of the worst things that could happen to people. It's one of the most heartbreaking things that could happen to people. End the relationship now. Let's reframe the strategy then. I think op 1 comes up really soon and tells us about hurdles, that you've gone through a lot in your previous relationship, and therefore you are able to overcome hurdles in the future. Note, panel, that this is true, that the probability that you are able to overcome something is definitely something that we must consider in the round. There's a probability that we could win the debate or miserably lose. But secondly, panel, the motion displays as the way it is crafted, displays that there already is an intention to break up. So it isn't saying that we're going to devalue every single experience that we've had in this relationship, but what we are saying is that insofar as there's an intention, insofar as there's guilt, that already means that we have sufficient evidence to end the relationship. But secondly, let's break up on regret, given that it's become a very big push in the round. So it is either that you're regretting not being with someone, you're regretting losing your first love of your life, Or you're regretting the attention that you couldn't give to the first part of your life, your first love of your life. You're regretting the empty compliments that you send the love of your life every single day because there's a 6-hour time difference and you cannot explain to her in person how much you love her because it is very difficult to adjust to a long distance relationship. We think that that sort of regret is something that we simply will not stand. But finally, panel, let's talk about what break up actually means. We think that insofar as you deeply love a person, because both sides of the house tend to agree with this logic, it means that they can come back. It means that when you've grown as an individual and you can sort out how you choose to manage a long-term relationship, and this can be through like other means as well. We do understand that there are other relationships in your life, such as the ones that you have with parents, such as the ones that you have with friends, some relationships that you cannot remove. We don't think that you need to pray or put somebody else at risk in order to try and fix those commitment issues, even if it is insofar as you have them. And the final thing that we need to restructure in strategy is the idea of monogamy. We don't necessarily think that this is something that is like valid insofar as a Eurocentric idea imposed on people to tell them that you must be in one person, like must be with one person for the rest of your life. That isn't something that we stand for. Firstly, let's just talk about why do people join together in a relationship. I think we just need to explain basic exchange theory on this side, in this question, that people join in a relationship to reap some sort of common or mutual rewards. This is important because when we consider the context of the relationship, proximity formed on the basis of the relationship. The fact that you could see somebody and give them flowers is the reason why the relationship is still alive. It isn't your fault that you do have to go overseas. It isn't your fault if you can't maintain the relationship elsewhere. So this formed the boundary of the relationship, the fact that you were intimate, the fact that you were with somebody. But secondly, this is important because these situations and your past experiences also do inform the type of relationship that you have, whether you like it or not. What does this mean? One, when you move overseas, it probably takes a very long time to adjust. Laura tells you about the ambiguous text messages that you get from somebody. It isn't your fault that you can't identify somebody's tone through an emoji. Secondly, that the new way of coping with this relationship is something that is very different from the intimacy that you experience with somebody. That you're going to be telling them that you look so gorgeous every single day because you're stringing on the last piece of love that you have for somebody to try and make them feel loved. Secondly, we told you that it makes you feel like you're living a proxy life, that you don't even feel like you're living your life anymore, that you don't even feel like you love somebody because you're still tugging onto the guilt. Because what if I'm not loving them enough? What if I can't explain to them how much I love them in this manner? What did they tell you? One, they said that you have proofs that the reason why you're in this circumstance is because you've had proof situations that affect you, such as your trauma, your family issues. One, we don't see we do understand that this is a major role in the types of relationships we play. We don't think you need to use your partner as a guinea pig to try and sort out the relationship issues that you've had in the past. But secondly, we also think that you need time to heal from those issues. If it is that you hypothetically jumped into your first relationship, we don't think that it is worth trying to calculate the risk of trying to love somebody over a 6-hour plane ride away. But finally, we already explained to you, and Daniel explained, that the psychological struggle that you face isn't worth it, that you're still trying to heal and you're also trying to maintain a relationship. It's not fair for both of you. The second thing that they tell you is that you love somebody so dearly that the relationship is going to succeed. But one panel, the debate is never actually about the longevity of the relationship as much as we'd like it to be. The debate is about whether the experiences leading up to the relationship can continue in the future or if it cannot. Given that we have proved to you that the probability that it can't continue is something that is likely to happen, I already think that we win on probability there. So 2 reasons why we win this clash. One, because we understand that although the externalities that side opposition tries to point out being very small are ones that drastically affect your relationship, no matter how strong love actually is. But secondly, that the quality of your relationship is going to degrade on their side, not just because you're 6 hours away, but because you're trying to experience a newfound kind of love, which is something that is not worth it, especially when you're trying to balance a million tasks at once. Secondly, how do we impact future relationships? And under here, we told you that wasn't in the spirit of the motion to assume that you're trying to fix your commitment issues. Panel, I think it's important to note that on opposition side of the house, you may just experience your last first kiss. For these reasons, you have to side with prop. Thank you.
The House thanks the third proposition speaker for those remarks and now invites the third opposition speaker to close out the first part of this debate. Here.
Hi, just check if I'm audible and visible because I don't want to lag out.
All good.
Okay. Give me a second to organize my notes. Panel, I watch K-pop girl groups. I really don't think I know what a relationship is like, but unfortunately, I think Prop also doesn't know what it's like, and that was their fundamental flaw in this debate. I'm going to do four things in my speech today. Firstly, I'm going to do extraneous response on everything that they told you about submitting to Western narratives of what relationships look like, right? I'm going to take that out at the very get-go. Moving then onto three issues. The first on what relationships actually look like. The second on your capacity for growth and why that in fact was in the spirit of the motion. And thirdly and lastly, on are you actually happy? But firstly, I want to take on this idea that Western narratives are going to direct the way that you see relationships in the future. The push from P2 and P3 is that you want to do things like have polygamy in Asian and African cultures, right? Two things. Firstly, the motion implies you're already committed to this relationship. I don't see why this necessarily changes on both sides of the house or why this was exclusive. If I was really committed to my partner, I would probably tell them I want to opt into this kind of relationship. I would see if they wanted to do that in the first place. But secondly, like the most important part is I don't see the point of this, right? This isn't actually in the debate. So what if it's Eurocentric? You believe in it, you're already in a relationship like it. I don't see what this is the major impact that they decided to be. I highly doubt this was a tipping point. The debate is about what happened in the very moment, but whether you're going to make that decision or not. But I want to move on into what relationships actually look like on both sides of the house. The claim from proposition is that the best thing to do holistically on their side of the house is that you're able to get a new partner. This is important because this is the backbone of the proposition case. But let's break down the pathway to victory here. Because any shred of positive counterfactual they had is held up by the flimsy assumption that getting a new partner was actually good for you. Two fundamental reasons why this was untrue. A, that on P2 they tell us you need to have good relationships, but at the same time they also tell us these people are pathological cheaters that they seem to emphasize upon so much. They're incapable of change, and as they tell you, it's environmental factors. But doesn't that also knife their own impacts? Like on their side of the house, what they claim is if this person loves you so much, they will come back to you in the future. But no, on their side of the house, these people are apparently such big cheaters that they don't care that after you're done with this relationship, you go on to the next guy and the next guy, and eventually just forget about it. That's the reality that they had to defend. But secondly, the furthermore actually knives their entire case because the relationships that they supported on their side, these new guys, whatever, drop in value because on their side of the house, you're looking for the guy that is willing to fill the hole in your heart. They're never going to be able to get someone as fulfilling to you as this one relationship because all you're going to be able to think about is how you missed out on the capacity to have a loving relationship. That every next person is likely to be a placeholder. That means on their side of the house, the impact of each relationship diminishes dramatically. But I want to point out the comparative because here were two things that we told you from the first two speakers that went unresponded to. One, that the heart grows fonder from distance. That is to say, on our side of the house, staying together is now seen as a reward for having a healthy relationship, and thus you're more likely to opt into one because you know that in the future, when you do see each other again, when you do get to have intimacy, it's going to be that much greater. But secondly, I want to clarify this relationship is one in which your partner actually cares about you. And this framing is uniquely one that they cannot ignore. Don't let them strawman the fact that, oh, on our side of the house, you're going to be so heartless about them. They're only going to text them one time every 6 months and they're going to feel terrible. That's not what we had to defend. We defended a world in which we're going to do things like call them, like have a genuine relationship with them and voice out issues. Because if they were able to have mature relationships and conversations with this person, I highly doubt why we are not able to.
POI.
I'll take that POI.
Your entire case is based in the best case scenario of your world. What if the relationship fails?
Fantastic. This moves you on to my second clash as to your potential for growth. And this is going to deal with the worst case scenario, right? So the claim here from the side of proposition is that by exploring new relationships, you can learn more, right? Here's why this was uniquely bad on their side of the house. Because I want you to note on their side, I already framed out to you why these relationships drop in value. But beyond that, when you broke up with this person from the very get-go, when you continuously question whether this relationship was feasible in the first place, where you think about how the grass was greener on the other side of the house, that's when you lose the capability to do things like self-introspection. That's when you opted into things like having constant flings. And here's where they misunderstand Alicia's POI. Because the nonchalant response we get is that, oh yeah, sure, we're able to have flings, but the crucial nuance that they miss is that each fling decreased the value of your emotions. That with every new fling, your securities grew even more because you viewed yourself more and more as a monster that cannot have commitment because you're fundamentally opposed to it. That on their side of the house, you exacerbate commitment issues, the point at which you opted to buy into them in the first place. What this meant was they created a vicious cycle in which you continuously gaslight yourself that I am a monster and I don't deserve a good relationship. That was the harm that they had to defend. But I want to look at the comparative here. I think Umar frames this up to you beautifully. It's unresponded to. Then on our side of the house, what you're able to do is before you move, you're doing things like learning that you want to see how to maintain a good long distance relationship for all of the reasons they point out to you that it's hard to maintain. But no, the reason why this is in the debate and they can't caveat this out is because this impacts how all of your future relationships go. That if you leave this relationship now without learning, without introspection, the value of all your future relationships, even if you break up with your first love, is significantly diminished. I want to weigh this out because the reason this was debate winning is because this went unresponded to all the way down from Alicia's speech. That you fundamentally degraded yourself, the point at which you are unable to get through, the point at which you're unable to forgive yourself, you let your insecurities take you over, you become a victim to your own desires. But before I move on to my last clash, I'll take a POI. 3, 2, 1. Great. Moving on to my last clash then, as to are you actually happy? Two claims from the side of proposition. Firstly, that these relationships are going to be hard to maintain because they're long distance. Two responses to this and why these were fundamentally false. First, I would argue that it's actually even easier to maintain it because beyond the fact this was a caring, fulfilling relationship in which you were likely to do things like call each other, don't let them strawman you that this is like 6 months, like a text in 6 months, and it is a guinea pig, which like literally makes no sense because you're already in this relationship. I would argue then that this is a support system you can continuously depend on. That instead of flip-flopping between 5 different guys at the same time, you're able to have one person that you can continuously depend upon for emotional support. And beyond that, I want to talk about intimacy. Because P2 and P3 have this weird focus on intimacy. But I think Umar already frames out to you that many people in fact live lives without needing to have intimacy. That in fact the lack of it only makes the moment where it happens much, much sweeter. But I want to weigh this out then in 2 ways. The first is to point out that regret occurs no matter what regret is going to occur on their side of the house, and this argument is important because it occurs no matter what. That on our side of the house, even if you break up 2 weeks later, it's much less damaging to your mental health because you didn't face the burden of having it all on your shoulders. You were able to explain it to maybe I had emotional issues, maybe he had emotional issues, maybe there were external factors like how busy I am. This is what you're able to justify. On their side of the house, you allowed them to spiral into a bout of irrationality. But secondly, that life in this new country is likely to be extremely volatile activity. On their side of the house, the struggle bled into the other areas of your life. It means you're unable to focus in your classes or wherever you are because you're always going to be thinking about this person. That at night, you're emotionally tormented by all the what could have beens. For all of these reasons, panel, you oppose.
I thank the third opposition speaker for those remarks. This marks the end of the substantive portion of the debate. We now move into the reply section. I invite the opposition reply speaker to take the floor to deliver a speech not exceeding 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Here.
Freddie Mercury said that love kills, But he also said, I would surely die if you dismiss me from your love. But this prop team didn't just dismiss love, he dismissed the nuance of the case. Because we agree with this proposition team that LDR isn't easy. Their burden, however, was to explain why the solution to that difficulty, to that adversity, was to be a quitter, not a fighter. They never fulfill this burden. In comparison, we do. We explained that our burden was never to prove that this relationship was 100% going to succeed when you move abroad. We just had to prove why unilaterally ending it now would leave you with soul-crushing regret and insecurity. That trying to give it a shot was still a sign of loyalty and trust. That attempting to carry on with some uncertainty was better than the certainty of heartbreak and loss. And because they refuse to engage with this characterization, they will decisively lose this debate. 3 issues. First, can this succeed? Second, will this be fulfilling? Third, will this hurt your partner? First, can this succeed? Again, we agree that your past commitment issues are a problem. They never explain why that problem would be left with you forever. We explain a huge range of reasons why you would be aware of these problems and would have the incentive to solve it. Because your friends and family want to give you honest feedback about your character. Because there's content online that want to make you self-reflect on whether or not you're being a good partner. That you honestly want to make yourself the best version of yourself because this was the first love and this was the greatest crossroads of choice in your relationship. So if there's any time to work on it, it was now. In comparison, their only response was that you can't grow because you can't grow. We said, yes, it may have been difficult to work through it in the past, but because of this choice of moving away, it forces you to reevaluate and work 10 times harder on it. That there are massive amounts of advice online from close friends and family who want to see you happy and healthy, who want to support you throughout this process. And even if it was hard, we explained it was worth not giving up on, which is why if those problems exist, we explain that you can overcome them. On their side, you never do. But we explained that if you couldn't overcome them, it was still worse on their side because you feed into those insecurities tenfold. You tell yourself and confirm the suspicions in your head that all you are ever was capable of was relationships that didn't require commitment. Because the one time you were forced to commit, you couldn't, that it will harm every one of your future relationships. So this team's metric was that we improve future relationships. We flip it and explain why it's far worse on their side, when you never give yourself the security of knowing that you could at least try to be a good person instead of giving up. Second, will this be fulfilling? They say 2 things. First, they say you won't have physical contact. Number 1, womp womp, use Snapchat, use FaceTime. 2, you can preemptively adjust your expectations for each other. The same way you can have honest conversations about your financial situation, about your religious beliefs. Let's work on it. Third, having less intimacy time makes those moments more special because you can treasure those areas of your interactions where you love them the most, that you can look forward to each time you see their smile again. Their only remaining material is a 2-sentence assertion on monogamy being a Eurocentric ideal. 1, this is an actor debate. If you believe that monogamy gives you happiness and this is the model of relationship you've been in, so be it. You're happier. Number 2, it's not exclusive. If you're so upset about Eurocentrism, go ask little Miss Alice or Henry if she wants to have an open relationship. Again, this team has really nothing left. It's too late to save it in prop reply. What we explained was that this would be fulfilling because part of the journey was working through how you were able to adjust into your new environments. That when you go onto the UCLA campus, that you were able to say, oh, this is what I did today. The beaches are so wonderful. The weather was great. I wish you could have been here with me. Maybe in 6 months' time, you can come and visit me. And that is the beauty of having this relationship abroad and that you don't give up on it. We never had to prove this relationship was always going to work. But as long as we prove that this was a symbol of trust that you should maintain, rather than abandoning them in the worst possible time for the both of you, you hurt them and you hurt yourself less. For these reasons, oppose.
The House thanks the opposition reply for those remarks and now invites the proposition reply to close out the debate. Hear, hear.
Cool. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Not all stories, just like a long-distance relationship probably isn't going to result in wedding bells and a successful YouTube self-help testimony. That is the same way that Malaysia's weekend is not going to end. Human nature, why your relationship is not going to be worthwhile. They try to ignore it and gaslight us, just like they do most probably in the relationships that they support. Never been prouder to propose. Two clashes in my reply. Number one, is continuing the relationship worth it? Malaysia gives us two reasons. They say, number one, it is because it's likely to last. We had two lines of response. We said, number one, that we were able to cast significant doubt over this. We said your relationship probably can't handle the stress that you fall out of love, which by the way, they one concedes, when you get into different situations and you grow and you meet new people, those kinds of things. But thirdly, because you're young and inexperienced and most likely bad at communication and you don't have the maturity to sustain it. I think that is more than enough reason to assume that it is at least fairly likely that your relationship won't last. But then we said, secondly, we went over and above and we said, if your relationship was so good that it should have lasted and it was so worthwhile, then we can achieve the same ends on our side, because your relationship can come back in a few years and get stronger because you've been around and you know that that's the person for you, guaranteedly. So if that indeed is the highest income, that very same end goal, I don't know what's exclusive to their side. But secondly, they say that you're going to have severe regret on breaking up with the relationship. It's going to haunt you for the rest of your life and make everything else that you do not as worthwhile and not as meaningful to you. Couple of responses we gave you. We said, one, the regret that you might have is greatly mitigated by the fact that you did what you thought was right and good and noble at the time. So then it's much less likely that you're going to be mad at yourself. That's what Juhi told you. No response. Secondly, we said that we think regret is actually probably a wash in this debate, because you regret something if you realize that it was the wrong decision and you are able to see the outcomes weren't the ideal ones. That it could go wrong on the side. I'm unsure why that's exclusive. But thirdly, the only regret you can't find something better. So when we're weighing this regret, if we're weighing this regret point, you don't get over, because you probably still have a life, by the way, versus you have the guaranteed impact of the stress and the fear of hurting someone and the guilt of leaving them, all of those kinds of things, all of those emotions overwhelming you, I would pick regret. But on the comparative, we told you a couple of things that go largely unresponded to. One, that you miss out on opportunities to explore other people and other aspects of yourself. Two, that you put yourself under immense pressure at a young age to be better. And we think when all of their analysis that they try to give about you viewing yourself as a failure and viewing yourself as a monster falls under here, because we told you you're probably going to fail when you're at this young age, and then you feel even worse because you broke the heart of your one true love. But lastly, we said that you need to push yourself, step out of your comfort zone in that very unique way. No response. When you're weighing this clash, you're going to look at two things. Number one, that whether or not a relationship lasts is difficult and uncertain to determine. But if it is true that that is the impact that we want, we are able to achieve that still on our side. But secondly, that we have guaranteed harms, like missing out on opportunities that haven't been responded to by the opposition. And so those kinds of things, those guaranteed harms that have massive impacts on your fresh new life, just aren't worth it. Break up. But secondly, where are we better for the other person? If they need to the other person, trust them, you have to try. The problem is with you, the problem is not with them. So they can't you put their life in pause and definitely put your relationship on hold. That's not fair. You're more than likely to be unfaithful. And their YouTube self-help and advice from your aunt wasn't good enough. According to the nuanced analysis, were better for the other person. If you love them, you're going to.
All right. The House thanks the proposition reply for those remarks. Thank you very much to both sides for that outstanding debate. Please cross floors, shake hands, and in the meantime, the judges will move to, I think it's breakout room 4. Yeah, breakout room 4 for deliberations. Thank you, everyone, and see you in the main room soon.
Thank you, judges. Thank you.